For centuries, the Jedi Order has served as the preeminent beacon of hope and light within the galaxy, deploying tens of thousands of guardians to serve the greater good and the will of the Force. During the invasion of Naboo, the dark counterpart of the Jedi Order once again reared its ugly head after centuries of being presumed dead, in reality just dormant. We are talking, of course, about the Order of the Sith, and specifically the arrival of Darth Maul and his master, Darth Sidious, otherwise known as the then Senator Sheev Palpatine. Under Sidious's tutelage was the Zabrak Dathomirian male known as Darth Maul. In just his few first days in the limelight, Maul was a mere Sith apprentice, but was able to match pace with Qui-Gon Jinn in physical combat, with Maul being at an extraordinarily young age, killing the Jedi Master and going on to contend with the likes of Mace Windu and Aayla Secura during the Clone Wars on various occasions. As the Sith of the modern era grew throughout the following decades, we came to learn the truest extent of their power. Sidious's second apprentice, Count Dooku, was able to outduel most members of the Jedi Council and defeat even the Master of Surisu himself, Obi-Wan Kenobi, on multiple occasions. Dooku fought the Grand Master of the Order at the time, Yoda, to a standstill at the astonishing 80 years of age, and dueled the Chosen One to multiple stalemates before his death at the end of the Clone Wars. This is all before even mentioning Darth Vader himself, who was widely regarded as the single greatest Jedi executioner in galactic history. The name Darth Vader is perhaps one of the most feared sounds to echo across the entire galaxy, as the Butcher, who was able to take on upwards of 8 Jedi Masters at a single time, marched across any known region in order to slaughter Jedi survivors. And at the head of this entire generation was the very same master to each of these three, Darth Sidious, as the Sith who was able to amass an armada capable of laying siege to the entirety of the galaxy. Darth Sidious is perhaps the single most influential Sith Lord since the presumed downfall of the Sith Order. Ruling over the galaxy with an iron grasp, Sidious ushered in the darkest era in modern galactic history, with ramifications that would be felt for years even after the collapse of his empire. With 4 Sith Lords each able to strike utter terror into the hearts of fully fledged Jedi Masters, we are left to wonder how the Sith Order collapsed in the first place with power scaling this formidable. As make no mistake, acolytes of the galaxy far, far away, the Sith apprentices of old were also more commonly more powerful than the Jedi Masters. As Yoda explains to Luke in Empire Strikes Back, it is more easy to gain power in the dark side more quickly than it is the light, and takes far less dedication. Therefore, on average, a dark side apprentice is nearly 3 times as powerful as a Jedi Knight, able to contend with the best and greatest of the Order despite their younger age. If these 4 Sith Lords from the modern era are constantly capable of butchering Jedi by the dozen, then how did an entire order of these dark warriors come to fall at the hands of the Jedi, leaving the Jedi as the dominant organization of Force users in the galaxy? If the Sith were so much more powerful than the Jedi, why did they lose? Well, stick with us today, Sith Lords, and let's explore how the immensely powerful Sith failed to contend with the order of ancient Jedi Masters. Perhaps the most important note is that there is a clear distinction between generations of Sith, and the generation that most fans are widely acutely familiar with is known as the Banite generation of the Sith era. Named for Darth Bane himself, the Banite generation was the generation of Sith that followed the rule of 2, and allowed only a master and an apprentice to represent the Sith Order at any given time. This included Sidious as well as his 3 apprentices, and this practice was specifically designed to do 2 things for the Sith. The first was to augment the power of the Sith through the continued accumulation of knowledge, as it was the designation of the Padawan or the apprentice to surpass the master in the dark side of the Force. Once an apprentice was able to learn more than his master and prove that the master to be obsolete, they then would be tasked with passing this knowledge down to the next generation after the master was killed. This allowed the collective sum of Sith knowledge to grow, as each Sith Lord would continue to grow more and more powerful than their previous master, and this power scaling would augment the strength of the clandestine order. As the organization evolved in the shadows, they built their array of knowledge and skills, seeing as at this time the Sith still existed. They just did not exist in the public eye until Maul resurfaced nearly 1,000 years after the reconstruction of the Sith Order into the Banite Sith. The second goal of the Rule of 2 was to mitigate the infighting within the Order of the Sith, which was a major problem before the Banite era. During the pre-Banite era, the Sith Order was was largely just as responsible for their own demise as the Jedi were, and arguably contributed more to their downfall than even their Jedi counterparts did. In the old era, their conflict was divided between their desire to dominate the galaxy as a whole, as well as their conflicts with one another, which often led them to butchering each other with the same fury as they would show the Jedi. Their philosophy viewed each Sith as an equal, and this augmented their own hubris and infighting as progress drastically stagnated because of this fact. In the pre-Banai era, the Sith did not make advancements in their own knowledge or skills, and they largely stayed tapped into their own tradition that paled in comparison to the skill of the Jedi Order, as the Jedi were willing to share their knowledge with one another, while the Sith, in an effort to harbor as much of their own power as possible, kept it secret from the rest of the Sith. The Jedi of this era, and their collective desire to progress the teachings of the Order, allowed them to be far more progressive and efficient, and furthermore, their influence over the galaxy and their own skill was increased, as well as their skill within the cosmic force. The Jedi accepted progression, while the Sith actively stagnated against it. In comparison though to the modern Jedi Order, the Jedi of the High Republic, and the ancient Jedi Knights, the ancient Jedi were far more open-minded and willing to learn and grow, and this led to a very interesting seesaw between the two orders as time went on. Ultimately, the pendulum would switch. In ancient times, the Sith remained stagnant in their dogmatic ways, while the Jedi evolved with fluidity and grace, which allowed the Jedi to reign supreme as the predominant Force users and build an order that dwarfed the Sith Empire. As time progressed, however, it was the Sith who learned to evolve and the Jedi who remained trapped in the old ways. This ideology eventually came to cripple the era of the Jedi that served during the Clone Wars, and while the Jedi remained trapped in the past and followed the traditions of the previous 1,000 years, the Sith evolved in ways that the Jedi never could have anticipated, as they were a brand new enemy. They may have shared the same namesake as the older Sith, but these Sith, the Banite Sith, were different. This evolution meant that Maul, as well as the Sith that would later follow him, were not the same generation that had previously crumbled and were defeated by the Jedi, and the Jedi had spent the last 1,000 years training to fight an enemy that no longer existed, in Yoda's own words. These Sith of the post-Banite generation were simply not the same enemy that the Jedi had fought before, and this is on full display with the apprentices that were produced because of the Banite era. Apprentices that could fully contend with and kill Jedi Masters. When Qui-Gon died, he did so because he had been trained on how to fight the old Sith. He had spent his life preparing for the same Sith of the pre-Banite era that opposed the Jedi, but he was outmatched and overpowered by an enemy that both he and the Jedi as a whole no longer recognized. As the lone teacher of each of these three in the practices of the dark side, Palpatine fully embodied the ambition that the Sith before him had so desperately sought to achieve and yet lacked: the complete domination of the Jedi Order and an iron grip on the galaxy at large. It was the new teachings of the Sith and the Rule of Two that ensured that the Sith were even more flexible than anyone could have ever anticipated, and their study and growth over the course of 1,000 long years eventually culminated with a new generation that was finally able to contend with the Jedi Order, who had long since fallen into their own dogmatic ways. The combined effects of the Sith's evolution and the Jedi stagnation finally gave way to a tip in the scales of power that had been so lopsided for so long, and the ultimate downfall of the Jedi Order, who had long since lost their way. But anyway, friends and acolytes, what did you think of this idea? Do you think that this was the primary trait that caused the destruction of the Sith, or do you think that there is something else at play here? And why do you believe that a Sith apprentice is so much more powerful than a Jedi? And what are your thoughts on the explanation on, despite their power, they constantly lost to the Jedi in battle? Do you agree that the post-Banite Sith are far more powerful, or rather enlightened, than their ancestors? And if not, what do you think led to the fall of the previous order? As always, my friends, may the Force be with you, and I will hopefully see you in the next video.